probably when I was a kid, probably before I was even 10 years old, because, Black Sabbath, was like, the first thing that I really heard that made me, be like, wow, like, cause that's the first metal band. And, my parents listen to music, my father loves like Hank Williams Sr., old country music. He likes, Rolling Stones and AC/DC and a lot of, rock and hard rock. And I'm sure it was through him or one of my uncles that I heard Black Sabbath for the first time. I don't know, maybe when I was 7 or 8, I guess, maybe it might have even been before then. I was probably scared then, but you listen to the song Black Sabbath. When I first heard that, I was like, shit, this is evil, but yeah, probably around then it would be Black Sabbath, and it pretty much changed my whole outlook on things. Like my mother listened to like Elvis, to like Frankie Valli and Waylon Jennings and old country music, like Johnny Cash and Wayne Nelson and stuff. So my parents would listen to music. They weren't like avid, like all day long listening to music, but they listened to it. And so I was familiar with all types of music. But when I heard Black Sabbath, that was the changing of everything. That's when I was like, that was the beginning of me wanting to be like, eventually my mentality being, I want to do this for my life. I mean, just going from Black Sabbath, and even like if you're going to the early like heavy bands like Venom. Venom's probably one of the first of all the like heavy extreme bands, if you will. Slayer, Possessed, Celtic Frost, all those bands. So even the German like thrash bands like Destruction and Sodom and Creator. There was nothing else like it. There was nothing else to compare it to. I mean, it was not like any other kind of music that was out there. Black Sabbath was heavy and dark. Maybe Kiss. But Kiss was more like always to me like rock and roll. They looked like Black Sabbath sounded. Like they looked, like especially Gene Simmons, Demon. He looks evil. He's spitting blood, and he looks like every person in Black Sabbath sounds like. If someone played you Black Sabbath for the first time and you never saw what they look like, and then you open your eyes and you showed them a picture of Gene Simmons with the blood from his mouth and the axe guitar, bass guitar, you'd be like, okay. Yeah, that's exactly what I imagined when I heard the song Black Sabbath. Hell, But Black Sabbath looked more just like some kind of hippie dudes, I guess. You know what I mean? They just looked, just like plain guys. But the music was totally different. It was heavier than anything else. And obviously, as music progressed, it became more, technical, more involved, more epic. Like Iron Maiden is a good example. Like, once Bruce Dickinson came to the fold of Iron Maiden, I think they lost a little bit of their punk side and, became more just of what we traditional, like heavy metal now, like just with the subject matter and whatnot. And Bruce Dickinson's voice is just, amazing. But you had all these different kinds of bands and there was nothing else you could really kind of compare it to. And that's drew it to, and of course, just like I said, Black Sabbath is just so fucking heavy. And then everything exploded and every band was there and every band had a distinct quality about them. Every single band. Possessed does not sound like Slayer. Slayer does not sound like Venom, Iron Maiden does not sound like Judas Priest, and Black Sabbath or Ozzy's solo does not sound like either of those bands. Everything was just fresh because there was nothing else to compare it to. And I dove into it. I loved it because it was just every single band was like, I like, give me the albums. I want them, I was just taking in so much, I don't know the first time I ever growled. I can't remember that ever, maybe if I growled at my parents because I was mad because they punished me or something, but like a growl in the context of music. I don't know. Like I said, I grew up listening to Sabbath and Iron Maiden, and Saxon and Judas Priest, of course, and Dio and all that stuff, and Dio with Black Sabbath, of course, and Ozzy solo and with Sabbath. And I would just sit in my house, in my room and just play the records and just try to replicate the sound that they, just basically just replicate what they were doing and sing. And I had no fucking clue what I was doing. I didn't have I guarantee I was probably a worse singer than I am now. Like, as far as like trying to sing, like notes or whatever, like be a singer, not a death metal growler, if you will. When I was just listening to those bands. And then of course, then you hear Venom, and then you hear Possessed, and you hear Slayer, and you hear all these other, heavier bands. And then I'm like, wow, for me, when it got faster and heavier, that's what I wanted. I wanted more of that. I didn't stop listening to the old heavy metal bands. I didn't. I mean, I grew up, heavy metal. The heavy metal bands were the first that I listened to. And I will say, Udo from Accept has a gruffer voice that's almost like a heavy metalish kind of death metal, like, he's got that to him. So, I mean, definitely that stood out. But like I said, I never stopped listening to the old heavy metal stuff. But once I started getting into like Slayer, I said, Possessed, Celtic Frost, and I wanted to sound like that, I kind of stopped. I kind of put the idea of being a heavy metal singer on the shelf and was like, I'm going to do this thrash death, whatever, this aggressive singing. So, I mean, I was in my room just singing, along the seven churches and Show No Mercy and I mean, all those Morbid Tales, all the great albums, from the early thrash bands and Venom and all that shit. So that's when I wouldn't say that was the first time I growled. That's the first time I started trying to sing, aggressive, to sing like, and growling wise, I mean, later on you had just the beginning of what is modern death metal, because Possessed to me is the first death metal band. But later on, what we consider death metal now, modern death metal, Obituary, Deicide, Morbid Angel, stuff like that. Yeah, that's when I was probably started really growling. My first band was in 1988, and the first demo we did, we recorded it in 89, I believe, but the songs were from 88, and I was growling then. I was definitely full on, growling. So that's one of the first times I could, and we actually did hardcore songs too. We did a Cro-Mags cover. We did Malfunction by the Cro-Mags. And we did, so we my first band, which was ironically was called Corpsegrinder. It was after a death song. We did covers. We did a Sacrifice cover, which is of course the thrash band. But we did a bunch. We had a super wide range of influences, and we did covers when we played shows. And but I was mostly wanting to go in that direction as early as 88, 87. I'm sure I did. I'm sure I was rotten to the core. I'm sure I was absolute fucking worst, But that's the thing when people ask me, how do you get, there's a lot of fans that come up to me at the shows and they're just like asking me, how did you get your voice to be this way? Because when I sing like that, my voice, it just feels raw and I can't talk. And I'm like, well, I basically just kept at it. I was not going to be stopped. I knew that you had to train your voice to withstand a certain amount of punishment. You can't be on stage singing for an hour and a half every night, whether you're singing or not. And you have to train your voice to put up with that kind of abuse, because it's not normal for that to happen, especially singing like death metal. That's an assault on your vocal cords for sure. I just kept at it. If it didn't sound right, I learned on my own. I mean, my teachers were the records, Chuck Schuldiner and Glenn Benton and John Tardy and Dave Vincent. And of course, even just having sung stuff since I was, when I was even before I was a teenager, like I said, Udo, and trying to sound like Bruce Dickinson, which I miserably failed at, I guarantee you, at Rob Halford, Nazi and stuff, I just, Tom Araya, all these guys that influenced me, Millie from Creator. I just kept at it. I just was like, look, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And then there was a point where I started to say to myself, all my friends, I knew all the lyrics. I could recite all the lyrics to Rime of the Ancient Mariner, to all these songs, I only bring that one up because it's like, 15 minutes long or something. That's like the most epic song in metal by Iron Maiden. But I knew all the lyrics. My friends were like, man, you know all the lyrics and you sing them in time, even if I'm not singing them like they do. And I was like, yeah, man, that's when it started coming around in my head. This is what I want to do. And so I just kept at it. I just knew that if I kept trying to sound like these guys, that I would figure it out. And I did. I didn't take any vocal lessons. There was no, especially for extreme music, there was no vocal coach. My coaches were the records. My coaches were the people who sang on them. I just kept trying to do it until where I thought, and I used to actually tape myself I used to have a little. I used to have I had a record player and I had a boom box, and that I could record. It had an internal mic. I could record, and I would record myself singing over Altars of Madness or whatever album I was singing, and then I could go, okay, I could hear how I sounded without just me standing there. Because I mean, look, everybody sounds good to themselves in the shower, but it's if someone records you and then you hear yourself when you're recorded, you're like, oh, I am bad. Sorry. So I would record myself and I didn't really take notes, but I would keep in mind, okay, that part, I'm not doing this right. I gotta maybe, I don't know. I really wish that I had an exact way to explain, it's just as simple as I just kept singing. I listened to the guys I liked and I kept trying. My mother's just like, I hear you screaming like a maniac up there. What are you doing? Just like, I'm just listening to music, Mom. I'm just at first when I started doing it, I don't think that I was as intent on being in a band, because you're talking probably 85, 86. I'm up in my room just every day. And that's all I was doing was screaming. My friends would come visit me at the house and they'd be like, hey man, we're going to the mall or something, whatever. All right, cool. Let me finish a song. I'd play something, put the needle back on the record. My friends would just be sitting there watching me, and I didn't care. I was just like, yeah, you're damn right you're watching me. And then eventually, probably, like I said, by the time Corpsegrinder started, that was like 1988. And by that time, I 100% I'm not stopping until I'm in a band, until I'm on stage and people are chanting my goddamn name. That's what I'm going to do. This is what I want. I'm going to be in a band. I don't want to do anything else. I want to be where Slayer's at. I want to be where Creator's at. Nothing's getting in my way. And my mother, my father, they never tried to sway me from doing that. Matter of fact, in the summers, after I was 18, I worked with my father a lot. He did construction and whatnot. So, I would work with him, but I'd come home as soon as I could. I'd get on the mic, so to speak, and start singing again. And I didn't have a microphone until I bought one when I was in Corpsegrinder. I was in the band for a while before I went to a store and purchased my own mic. Somewhere in this house, I have the receipt for it still. Well, I can tell you this: when we did the first tour that I ever did with Cannibal Corpse was in Europe. And Immolation was there. We were sharing a bus with Immolation. And I remember I was just an idiot. Monstrosity we had done about 14 shows maybe in Europe with Pestilence and a German band named Torture. And this is like 1993, I think, somewhere around then. And, we were opening, so we weren't playing that many songs. And so my voice was fine. And of course, dude, I was 23 years old, man. I was like nothing. It was just, I was way, more, I guess, adorable, if you will. But when I got in Cannibal, I remember just every night I'd be downstairs in the bottom of the bus. Like it's a double-decker bus. There was a bottom lounge, and they called it the Black Metal Lounge because I would be in there. I'd be down there screaming like Heaven Shall Burn When We Are Gathered by Marduk and Dark Funeral. I'd be listening to those guys and some other bands. And I was just like, after the show was over, I'm in the lounge singing other music. And I remember Ross from Immolation, I was like, I couldn't really talk. My voice was gone. But he's like, dude, but you sound perfect every night. He's like, somehow you get on and you push through it. So that I learned, listen, you can't be playing, 18 songs, or we were probably playing more back then. We were probably playing 20 songs or 22 songs a night, something like that. You can't do that for an hour and a half and then get on the bus and start screaming, black metal songs or, singing, heavy metal songs or whatever you're trying to do. And then expect your voice to go back to normal so that you can play the next night. So I learned that taught me, listen, man, and trust me, there's some times even to this day where I'm on the bus and we're, show's over and me and our sound guy, Johnny, and our drum tech, Chris, we're sitting there. We got old school country music playlist that we listen to relax and have some whiskey and some beers. And every once in a while, George thinks he can sing like Hank 3, you know, or David Alco or Waylon Jennings or whatever. George feels like he can do that, and then he starts singing it. But I never go overboard like I did on that first tour with Immolation. And I learned very quickly, look, you just can't be out doing this stuff. You got to let your voice relax. You got to just sit and relax in the bus. Listen to the music you want to listen to. Air drum. Don't sing. Save your voice. And then it became stronger and stronger after more and more shows and practice and all that stuff. No, nothing at all. When we walk on stage, we usually, we get on stage and they hold the notes out, and you'll see us kind of, you'll see the guys, Eric and Alex and Paul's just checking out the kit and, just getting himself settled. Rob, they're looking at at their amps or whatever. And I'll be just taking a drink of water or something. And right when I'm doing that, right before Paul's looking around and he's about to do the 3 count, I'll do like a, and then I'm like, okay. And then I know, okay, it's going to be good, or I'm going to have to work at it. It's maybe not sounding as good as it can be. I don't go in the backstage and do warm-ups. It's just too loud because I'm not singing. I mean, those guys are sitting there trying to warm up before the show, and I'm just going all over the place. They're like, dude, shut up, But I don't need to do that. I just go on stage. I do a few growls, a couple of high stuff, and then I'm like, all right, I'm ready. That's my warm-up is like 2 or 3 growls and 2 or 3 screams while we're on stage right before Paul hits the count, and then we go into it. Well, I never, ever smoked cigarettes, and I don't know, I can't say, for 100% certainty that could ruin your voice. I'm not saying that it can, because I don't really know. I believe Glenn Benton smoked for a bit of time, and I mean, he still sounds amazing. The last time I saw Deicide, he kicked ass, so, but I never did that. And I know that's helped I know for me, it's definitely helped my voice. I've never smoked. I don't smoke weed or anything like that either. So, that's definitely helped. Basically, I practiced a real lot. I don't practice nearly as much as I used to in the old days, when I first got in Cannibal and when I was younger, when I was in my room every day singing. But you got to take care of yourself. Trust me, I've played some shows where I was, hungover. That's no fun. That's the worst, and it's not going to help your voice. And definitely don't sit in the bottom of the bus, screaming black metal all night long after you just played the show. I mean, if you're not in a band and you want to sing for longer periods of time a day, I mean, I probably could tell you, I would probably, back when before I was ever in a band and first starting, I would probably sing 3 or 4 albums a day. And maybe I would even take a break and come back. I just kept going and going and going, but my body could handle that then, you're talking 17-year-old. Now I'm 52. I would never do that now. I just want to play the show, and there you go. Like I said, maybe every once in a while I'll put on my country hat and think I can sing country, which I know I can't, but I'll act like I can. But I just try not to ever overdo it, because it's, it's just, another thing, like, playing shows, I try to stay away from, like, after we're playing the show, I try to not, I try to just stay on the bus and keep my voice at a moderate level of speaking, just so that, like, I know King Diamond, he sits in a hotel. He takes extreme care of his voice, especially when you hear how he sings, yeah, a lot of guys are like, come on, let's go to this bar, after the show. And I'm like, no, we're going to go to the bar. The music's going to be cranked so loud that I have to yell at you to even talk to you. And I just sang a whole show. My voice needs rest. It does not need to be doing this. Yeah, like I said, when I was an idiot when I first, did the first Cannibal tour, but I learned, and I paid the price for it. And I was worried every night, like, dude, I finally get in this band. I'm living my dream right now, and I'm going to blow it because I'm too busy screaming, listening, screaming all these bands and stuff after the show. And so I would definitely say, don't overdo your voice. Don't tax it. You got to listen to your body. Eventually it'll tell you, okay, give me a break. Come back tomorrow. We'll try this again.